Okay, so let's get right into this one. Picture this. You're having a dispute with your homeowners association, so you write a private letter to your neighbors to try and rally some support. But before you even send it, the HOA somehow gets a copy and posts it, along with a nasty rebuttal from their lawyer, on the official community website for literally everyone to see. You'd think, that's a slam dunk case of retaliation, right? Well, that's exactly what one homeowner thought, and she decided to take her HOA to court. But here's the twist, and this is what makes this whole story so fascinating. Even though her private letter was blasted out to the public, she lost. The judge completely denied her petition. And the reason why reveals this incredibly important lesson about the difference between what feels wrong and what is actually illegal. And there it is, right there in black and white, straight from the judge's decision, a flat-out denial. So how on earth did we get here? To really understand this pretty surprising outcome, we've got to rewind and go back to the beginning. All right, let's unpack the backstory, because this whole thing didn't just pop up out of nowhere. No, these tensions had been simmering for a long, long time. So, at the center of all this is a homeowner named Nancy Bender. And according to the court documents, she and other homeowners felt like the board was just totally ignoring their concerns about some really big issues. We're talking finances, water bills, meeting minutes. They wanted to have a discussion, but they just felt like they were hitting a brick wall. So, what do you do in that situation? Bender decided she had to take action. She started drafting a letter to her neighbors to get enough support to call a special meeting, which is a formal way to force the board to talk about these things. But, and this is the absolute key to this whole story, the board somehow gets their hands on a copy of this draft letter. And then, bam, on the day of the annual meeting, they publish her letter and their lawyer's response for the entire community to see. So you can imagine how she felt. From her point of view, this was a total power move. She saw it as a deliberate attempt to intimidate her, to shut down the conversation before it even got started, and basically to punish her for trying to organize. This feeling, this sense of being publicly targeted, is what took this from a neighborhood squabble to a full-blown legal battle. Okay, so that's the drama. Now let's look at how that feeling of being wronged gets translated into a very, very specific set of legal accusations. This is where things get really interesting. Bender took the next step. She filed a formal petition with the state. She wasn't just going in there saying the board was unfair. She was officially alleging that they had violated specific community bylaws and even state laws. Now, her case really boiled down to two main things. You can see it here. First, she claimed the HOA violated Bylaw 3.03. That's the rule that lays out exactly how you're supposed to call a special meeting. And second, she cited a few specific Arizona state laws. This was the legal 1-2 punch that she was building her entire case on. So she had a clear grievance, she had her specific legal claims. Seems pretty solid, right? Well, this is where it all falls apart. Let's get into the legal reasoning that completely unraveled her whole petition. The judge's decision basically came down to 3 key points that just dismantled Bender's case piece by piece. First up, the state laws she cited. Turns out they were the wrong ones. Second, her main complaint about the bylaw, the judge called it unripe, and we'll get to what that means. And third, because of those first 2 things, she just plain failed to prove her case. Let's break each of those down. Okay, that first blow was technical, but it was massive. The judge found that the state statutes Bender was using didn't actually apply to her kind of planned community. It's kind of like trying to use the rules of basketball to argue about a football game. She was aiming at the right target, but she brought the wrong rule book. Now for that second reason, and it all hangs on this key legal idea, unripe. In the legal world, a case is unripe if you file it too early. The potential harm you're suing over hasn't actually happened yet, so there's really nothing for a court to rule on. And this is a perfect illustration of the problem with Bender's case. She sued the HOA for violating Bylaw 3.03, the rule about the procedure for special meetings. But think about it, her letter was just a draft. A special meeting was never officially requested, and it sure was never held. You can't violate the rules for running a race if the race never even started. Her claim was premature. So this brings us to the core lesson of this entire conflict. It's this critical distinction between what feels unjust and what actually counts as a legal violation. I mean, just look at the disconnect right here. What was Bender's grievance? What was she really mad about? It was the HOA retaliated by publishing my private letter to shut me down. But what was her legal claim? It was the HOA violated the bylaw for how to conduct a special meeting. Do you see it? The thing she was actually upset about was not the thing she sued them over. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. The judge spelled it out perfectly. Judge Clark basically wrote that Bender's actual problem, the fact that they published her private letter, is simply not a violation of the specific bylaws she chose to sue under. Her heart and her legal papers were telling two completely different stories. So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that in the eyes of the law, just feeling wronged isn't enough. You have to connect that feeling to a specific, provable violation of a rule or a law. Bender may have had a very legitimate grievance, but she failed to build her legal case around that grievance. Instead, she built it around a rule that just didn't apply to the situation at all. And that leaves us with one final thought. This case is a really powerful reminder to ask a critical question in any conflict, whether it's with an HOA, your boss, or anyone else. What is the difference between what feels wrong and what you can actually prove was a violation of the rules? Because the answer to that question can make all the difference in the world.